This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. Let it shine, let it shine, let it shine.
Hi friends, I'm Carrie Jo, and this is Holy Chuckles Podcast. This is a space for honest faith, lived experiences, and shining a light in the places we've learned to hide. I'm not here to explain faith. I'm here to live it out loud. So take a breath and let's make room for what's real. Welcome back to Holy Chuckles Podcast. I'm glad you're here. On episode 37, I asked the question, where in your life are you still honoring the wrong thing just because it has a different name? And I want to answer that question myself. This question showed up for me in the days leading up to when I gave my resignation for my last job. I had no savings. I had no backup plan, no guaranteed income. And the thing I felt called to do was this podcast. And this podcast does not make any money. So of course, fear showed up. The weeks leading up to my resignation, I had been thinking about resigning. I had been contemplating it. I had been going over everything in my head. And then I made the decision that I was going to do it. And then a couple of days before I was to give my resignation, I widened my lens and I started listening to outside voices instead of listening to what God had already made clear inside me. And the people that I had discussed this with, I valued their opinion. But what it did was it caused me to pause. And that's exactly what I did. Because the day I had planned to turn in my resignation, that day came and went, and no resignation was sent. That was me honoring the wrong thing. I was honoring security. I was honoring opinion. I was honoring fear disguised as wisdom. And that evening, I was so disappointed in myself because I didn't give my resignation. In fact, the feeling that I had about giving my resignation came in stronger. It came in clearer. And that night, while I was by myself, I said, I'm not asking opinions. I'm sending in my resignation tomorrow, and I don't care what anyone thinks. The next day, I was scheduled to work from home, had my cup of coffee, was sitting at my desk, and I was writing out my resignation. And there was a knock at my door. At that time, my ex-wife and I, we were still in each other's lives. She still lived down the hallway. And that knock was her at my door. She wasn't feeling well. And I was still her place of comfort. So she came to my apartment. She came in. She sat down on my couch. She didn't look like she felt well. And I said to her, I'll help you in a few minutes. I need to send this first. I finished my resignation letter and I hit send. And then I said to her, I just sent in my resignation. I guess I needed to say it out loud to someone, to say it out loud that I really did it. And the part that matters, as soon as that email was sent, chaos started around me. When that chaos came about, the old me would have questioned everything. I would have said, is this a sign? Is this God telling me I shouldn't have done this? Did I make a mistake? But not one time in the midst of that chaos did any of those thoughts cross my mind. I stayed clear. I stayed present. I was calm, I was grounded, and I was steady. Later that afternoon, my system director sent me a message and said, "Hey, can we talk?" My system director called me that afternoon to confirm this is what I wanted to do. And he asked me, was anything wrong? Could they do anything? Is there anything that could change? Was I unhappy? And I can't even believe the words that came out of my mouth. I told my truth. This is what God is calling me to do. And I was bracing for his response. But I already knew he was a man of faith. And his reply, I can't compete with God, so I'm not even going to try. And see, earlier that day, I said a little prayer and I said, God, if I made the wrong decision, if I heard you wrong, let me know through my systems director. Because see, I was new in my faith. And so I still questioned a lot of things. And so I said that prayer before I was to talk to my systems director. And then my systems director replies, I can't compete with God, so I'm not even going to try. And when I got off that phone, I said, thank you, God, for my answer. And thank you, God, for the confirmation. Because God answered my prayer. And my prayer was, let me make sure I understood you correctly. That this is not just my own understanding. That I'm hearing you clearly. Because there's a lot of chaos going on in my life right now. And God answered. And the answer was, I can't compete with God, so I'm not even going to try. For the first time in my life, when I gave that answer, I didn't sugarcoat it. I didn't make it about another opportunity. I told my truth. And when I hit send on that email, it wasn't panic. It wasn't fear. It was calm. It was clear. And I didn't question it. And that's how I knew I was doing the right thing for me. And now I know in that moment, I wasn't honoring the wrong thing anymore. I was honoring myself. I was honoring what God had asked me to do. And I was hearing correctly. And I was feeling correctly. The old me that followed those old patterns, that me would have stayed. That me would have stayed for security, for approval, because of money. That me would have stayed out of fear. Have I had meltdowns since I left that job? Absolutely. But here's the difference. Fear isn't leading me anymore. Alignment is. For years, I thought strength meant holding everything together. This new me now understands strength. And sometimes that means letting everything fall apart and staying steady through it. So when I asked that question, where in your life are you still honoring the wrong thing just because it has a different name? I'm not asking from judgment. I'm asking from experience because I almost did it again. I almost honored security. I almost honored opinion. I almost honored comfort. But I didn't. And when that fear started to creep in, when that unknowing started to take a hold of me, when that chaos that morning came in my life, I stood still for a minute. And I didn't ask God, am I making the right decision? I asked God for understanding. I asked God to show me that I heard correctly. And God did exactly that. I didn't ask God to make things better. I didn't ask God to improve my life. I asked God to show me that I heard correctly. I asked God to confirm what I was unsure about because I said, God, I'm new in my faith. Help me out here. I'm pretty sure I heard you correctly. I'm pretty sure I felt it in every fiber of my being. But you know, I'm new here and I want to do the right thing. I want to do the aligned thing. So help me out with a little bit of confirmation. And God gave me exactly what I asked for. When I gave that resignation that day, when I asked my ex-wife to set to the side because I was doing something for myself, when my systems director called me just to confirm this is what I wanted to do, I chose myself. I chose my healing and I chose obedience. I chose alignment with God and I chose alignment with myself. And it felt calm. It felt grounded and it felt right. And there are days when life is uncomfortable, but that's where my faith comes in. And it's not faith that God is going to resolve all my problems or make my life a cakewalk. It's faith that God is going to hold me through the discomfort while we figure it out. And I have no idea what tomorrow looks like. It might be another job. It might be having a roommate. It might be sleeping on someone's couch. But the one thing I do know is I'm not fearful anymore of what might be, because now I'm looking forward to what it could be. In your life, if what you are choosing feels chaotic, frantic, panicked, that might not be alignment. Alignment is quiet, doesn't scream, doesn't pressure you, and it doesn't manipulate. Alignment stands there steady and it says, this way. And you either trust it or you don't. But for me, I finally trusted it and I'm not looking back.